Hey, what is up? This is Jake Hofer with Exodus Trail Cameras. On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're headed to Kentucky to visit with Reese Johnson. Now, Reese has been on some Exodus content in the past. He's been on Trail Cam Radio a handful of times, and he was also on the hunt when we went to Colorado, public land elk hunt. And you can watch us wander around for 10 days on public ground on our YouTube channel here. But this video is all about his whitetail collection, hearing the stories of some of the bucks he's killed from over the years. And you also get to check out his family shed that has multiple generations of antlers and stories. So you get to check out all of that here in this week's episode. While this video is live, part of the team is making a trip to Oklahoma, and we're going to be visiting with some really cool guests, and even one I would consider a legend of the industry. And if you guys can guess who this Oklahoma legend is, drop it in the comments, and let's go ahead and get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Reese Johnson, and welcome to the Johnson House. Come on in. So, I'm a real estate broker, licensed in Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm fortunate enough to help folks buy hunting farms around the area, as well as houses too. We've lived here in Western Kentucky for 15 years now, and hunted deer hard all across where we've been, across the U.S. But these are the ones that my wife lets me keep in the house. You know, it's been a hard-fought battle to get what we can get here in the house. I'll start on the end. This deer here, I shot in 2018, I believe, at my good buddy Alex Lang's place. Yes, this was the deer he was hunting. I came into town, hunted 2 days, second morning, and he hunted the better spot, which I would have too. And he put me kind of in the lesser one, and, well, naturally he comes by me chasing a doe. So, never did score him. I really don't know. I got a couple scores here on a few of these, but it's not significant. We actually had that deer aged we sent it off, and I think it was 6.5 based off the teeth. And he had several trail cam pictures of that deer actually on another farm a couple miles away even. This deer here, picked it up this morning actually. Glad to have him back. This is my 2019 deer, Kentucky. This is a 5-year-old deer that I had 3 years of history with. He was not actually my target buck that season, and because based off of his habits at 4 years old. At 5 years old, he, during the rut, actually showed up and started spending more time on our farm, whereas he hadn't as a 4-year-old. And in my opinion, I just think he was a more dominant deer that year and kind of took over. And I didn't hunt there hard the opening week, first week in November, and then I checked the camera and I started kicking myself. It's like, why did I not hunt here? You know, this was the deer I wanted. He was bigger than the other deer I was chasing. Well, hunted 2 times, second afternoon, he came in. And to go into that a little further, it was actually a weekend where we were doing a wounded warrior hunt. I was hunting with a veteran that morning, and I had blocked off my entire weekend to hunt with those guys, as we do every year. It's a hunt we thoroughly enjoy. The guy I was taking didn't tell me he had an obligation that afternoon. Well, everybody else was out hunting. What else am I going to do? I run up the road about 20 minutes to my farm, get in the stand. There he was. So that's my 2019 deer. This deer here was the first big deer I really ever killed. This was 2009. First deer with a bow. I was 17. We had pictures of him at 2, 3, and 4. Could have hunted him at 3. Opted to wait. Obviously, it paid off for me. This was a Halloween buck. That's why Halloween has been so special to me, even though I haven't killed anything since. This deer means a lot to me also because my grandma passed away just a handful of days after this, but she got to see me shoot this deer, and that really meant a lot to me because she knew what I was doing, and she got to see that. So that was a Halloween night buck, small acreage, and that kind of really jump-started, kicked it off from there, and those are some of the bigger ones that are actually finished that are here at the house that my wife lets me keep. I got a couple more to show you here before we take off to the shop. This is a shed, obviously, that I picked up last year. Hunted this deer pretty hard this year. Actually missed him. I hit a limb. Arrow went right underneath him, watched the limb fall. Obviously, it hurt my feelings. He actually got killed by the neighbor the following week. So that one hurt pretty good. Got quite a bit of time into him. Still have that to show for it. So we got one more here in the house, and we'll go on down and take a look. This is my son Jeremiah's room. Obviously, he's here. So one deer here, and this one, as they all do, this has a pretty wild story. We have a farm that we've hunted for 10 years now. This deer was actually there the very first year we had it. No history showed up. I'm assuming 3.5, 4.5. At the time, it was one of the bigger deer. It was 2012. So that weekend, I was in college at the time playing ball, and I had come home to hunt Saturday, Sunday. I was going to school 2.5, 3 hours away, and actually skipped class that morning, Monday morning, and was going to be back for practice in the afternoon. Well, guess what? Shot this deer Monday morning. Kind of him high, no man's land. Never did find him. Followed blood. Nothing working there. Called my coach. Admitted what I had done. Said, Coach, please let me stay and look for this deer. Can I skip practice today? It's fall. It's November. We don't play till spring. No. Had to be there. No excuses. So I loaded up, left my dad to look for it. We never found the deer. Looked hard. Shed season looked hard for years to come. 2016, March 23rd, which was 1,227 days later, the biologists, or folks that help work with the state there, came in and burned those native warm season grasses. And when they did, he was laying right in the middle of it, which was exactly 180 degrees from the way he ran and the blood we had. So without that, which is just, he's got this really cool coloration, 100% him, got truck cam pictures, video of him that day. So that deer's a wild story. 1,227 days later, turned him up, and now he's home. What is it, Bubba? Deer. All right, now I'm going to take you guys out to the shop at my dad's house. That's where all the real deer are. All right, we made it to the shop. Let's take a look at what's in here. So what you're seeing, there's a lot here. This is more or less the Johnson family legacy. Talking 3-4 generations worth of deer antlers. I don't think we've hardly ever let one go. And so I'll kind of go in order as we go down the wall. A lot of these here are from my grandpa and my dad back in the early 80s, when obviously there was less deer in the northern hills of Arkansas. And so a lot of these are his first deer, second deer, so on and so forth. And then from Arkansas, we moved to the coast of Georgia and went there and spent a lot of time there. And so those deer obviously weren't, in Savannah as big as Kentucky. So after spending years and years there, we moved to Kentucky, and it was like, wow. So we were hooked. Midwest, we call it that. We've been here ever since, 15 years now, pushing. And so I'll go down the line, talk about some of my favorite ones. These 3 deer here are the ones that my mom has shot. This was her first buck, was a 4-year-old. We have sheds too. Followed at 3.5, made sure we didn't shoot it. He didn't grow as much as we'd hoped. He was huge though, probably well over 200 pounds, 220, 230. This was a deer here that she shot last year as a 4-year-old, shed at 2 there. The story on it is my wife actually shot it at 3.5 with a rifle for her first deer, wounded it, knocked it down, just more or less stunned it right underneath the spine. He got back up and ran off, and we were just caught off guard. He survived, came back the next year, 4.5. Mom went in there and she shot him with a crossbow. That was her second buck, and then there's a couple antlers there from the deer she hit with my dad's truck on the first time she ever drove it. So as we go down here, these are getting in some of my dad's deer. That deer there means a lot to me. It was a coast of Georgia deer, which that's a pretty good one for that area. I was 4 years old, tied. I vividly remember being tied in a lock-on. As he literally tied me to him chest to get me up in the tree, tied me into a lock-on, then went and got all set up. And I had my little red bow, which I think a lot of folks in the 90s remember those little red bows. And that deer came by. We shot it out of the swamps on the coast of Georgia. So that deer means a lot there. This one right here, I picked up last year, deadhead, public land. I actually found it right underneath another guy's stand, essentially. And I think it was well deserved for that fella because he had a pile of corn out, which is obviously not legal. So a little karma there. My dad shot this one here as well on a different farm. Obviously, it's a pretty mature deer. We had him the year before as well. It was the second year we had the farm. Really cool deer, low 50s. Don't really score just a ton of these, at least officially. So as we going down, so these are 3 more Kentucky deer here. Dad shot that one with a bow, the top one with a gun, the middle one as well. The story about the middle one is my dad and I were hunting. We were driving home after hunting the Thursday, Friday afternoon before gun season came in. That deer was standing on the side of the road, about to cross the road. We saw him in the headlights about a mile away. Opening day of gun season that afternoon, he shot it a mile back on our place, a mile down the road. And it was no doubt the same deer. And I've actually got a shed to him the year prior as well. These deer here are all South Arkansas, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004 for both of those. These are all my dad's. These are all bow kills. Some of, Southwest Arkansas where we spent a lot of time growing up there. Another stop on the trail, you'll say. Another Arkansas deer there that had a leg injured. This deer here is one of my dad's as well. It's a Mississippi deer. It was a club hunt. The story on it is he actually drew. They were going in order of drawing. He drew the last spot. Pick got put in the last stand, went to shoot a doe, and that was the biggest deer they had. And it came by him, and he was, obviously a guest on that hunt. So as we get down to here, we're starting to get into some of my deer. This was another one I shot at my buddy's Alex's place in 2014, 9 days after my daughter was born. Ruffled a few feathers, but, had to get back out there. My first Kentucky deer, second Kentucky deer, another Kentucky deer. Top one, story on it is I was having shoulder surgery as I was playing ball, tore my labrum, had a surgery scheduled for 11 o'clock, an hour from the farm. Got up, went hunting. Mom was against it, couldn't talk me out of it. It was rut, middle of November. That's just when they could get me in. I'm in the stand. They call me, say, hey, your surgery's bumped back. You can stay. So I'm staying a little longer. So okay, I got an extra hour because it's an hour plus to the hospital. Well, that deer come by, shot it, called my dad and said, hey, shot a deer, I got to go. And he dealt with it and actually made it to the surgery late. I was already back. So that's a cool one on that story. This deer here is the first one I ever mounted. Came off our family farm in Arkansas. It's 100 acres. Been the family for quite some time. Most of the grandkids have killed their deer there. My grandma, great-grandma, everybody, that's kind of the area there. So that deer's got some value, some sentimental value to me there. It's the second buck I ever killed. This one here I killed in college. Wasn't able to come home until the day after gun season went out, which is the day after Thanksgiving, Monday afternoon, 12:30 in the day. Was walking out, walked right into the middle of a chase, found the nearest tree, had 10 or 12 bucks around me going crazy. Didn't know the deer, don't know where he come from. He got mixed up in the chase, shot him with the bow the day after gun season went out. Top one there's my first buck, second buck, third buck, fourth buck, so on. This is actually an Alabama deer, shot in 2009. Shot this one on a youth hunt here in Kentucky. That was the first deer I killed by myself, I believe. So these two here in the corner are also deer I shot. These are actually public land quota hunts we do every year. My dad and I go. We've been going for 5 years now. He's killed deer on 4 out of 5 trips. I've killed deer on 3 out of 5 trips. Those are two of mine, as well as the top one, which is my biggest from those hunts. This one and this one as well, we're both taking on those trips, as well as the one that was mounted over here on the right. That was the very first year we went. He shot one that afternoon. I shot one that afternoon, and it was just a cluster trying to orchestrate. You have a time you can get in, time you can get out. You have to be checked in, checked out. We actually had to ask permission to go back in the next morning to look for his deer after finding mine that night. We didn't have time, and so it was a really crazy ordeal, and I think everybody who was there on that quota hunt, there's only so many people allowed in. We got drawn for it, that they knew the story of the guys from Paducah who came up there and shot 2 deer on the first afternoon and created a mess for everybody trying to get in and out of areas that were opening and closing as we go. This deer here, I shot in Oklahoma last year. First ever spot and stalk on the ground out there in some wide open country. I actually got behind him, which you're really not supposed to do, but just the way it worked out, he came by me a little too far, got past, circled, crawled up there to where he was. He was kind of on a plateau, and he more or less heard me, but it was, pre-rut, early November. He got curious and kind of started doing that, head up, kind of looking for me. And then he finally worked around that bush, and I was able to get a shot at 35 yards on the ground. So that was my first ever spot and stalk deer. So that one's fun there. This deer here is going on the wall as soon as I can get him there. This was a 5-year-old. Have a lot of history with. That's his sheds from 3.5, one side from 4.5. That deer means a lot, and we'll probably go on the wall as soon as we can get him there. This is a Kentucky deer my dad shot. The neat part about it is shot the deer, couldn't find it, called in a friend. I was at school at the time. They were walking around, couldn't find the deer over a course of like 3 or 4 days. Finally, after giving up, he climbs in the stand that afternoon. First deer to come by chasing a doe, this one. He made it, second shot, got a second opportunity, was able to connect that time, and now he's on the wall. These are obviously sheds. I love to shed hunt, picked up over 100 last year. Most of these boxes are from different farms, different places, just they're organized by where they came from, so I'm able to keep track of that and then hopefully put something together from year in and year out. So that deer up there is probably the biggest deer in this building. I'd never scored him. I'm hoping to get him officially scored soon. The story on it is, I'm a real estate agent broker, and I met some folks who called me. They had a home in 30 acres. I went out there and looked at it, walked into their garage, and that rack was there, had extension cords on it the first time I ever saw it as a holder. And it just blew my mind. And obviously I was pretty fascinated with it and took a liking to it and asked him a bunch of questions. He didn't hunt. He told me he woke up one morning and looked out in the drive, and that was laying in the ditch, been hit by a car. And, no telling, I don't know what year, how long ago it came from, local Western Kentucky deer. And there he is. And then as a closing gift, once we sold, once I was able to help them get the home and acreage sold, they knew how much, deer obviously mean to us as a Johnson family, and they gave me that. And so that's one that's really neat and probably one of the bigger ones in here. I'll go over a few of these sheds. There's more than I can talk about and I have time for. How it is. Us diehard deer hunters, we could talk stories for days. This is one of the bigger ones we have. This is a South Arkansas shed. This one's pretty sentimental to me. My dad and I were riding the four-wheeler together down a trail. I don't remember what we were doing. And all I remember was him slamming on the brakes, and I'm sitting in front of him as a young kid, and he, bodies me up and hits me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And this thing is hanging in the briars right off the edge of the trail. So this was the deer that we hunted for a long time. These up here are actually sheds from the same deer, we believe. They've been put on the pedestal, obviously, but same deer. We had a lot of history with it. It actually ended up getting shot a couple years later by a friend of ours after we had moved off from Arkansas to Kentucky. So this is actually one of the set of sheds we're more proud of from Savannah. You can see those tips in that sandy soil. That's just the way those deer grew. And to be able to pick up a set like that, that's probably mature deer out there. I'm not super familiar with that anymore as I haven't lived there in a long time. But these are a very unique set that definitely proud of and been able to keep over the years. And so there's a lot of different hours here, lots and lots of miles. I mean, we spend tons and tons of time in the woods, hunting, walking, scouting, you name it, we're doing it. Tons and tons of history as a family. And this is, like I said, the Johnson family legacy. If there's one thing we're known for, it's our deer craziness, as you could call it. Thanks for coming by, but we've got miles to walk, so y'all going to have to get.